I would like to talk to you about importance of lockout and tagout procedures. As a millwright, you might be involved in replacing gaskets at the flanges. For example, in figure 2, it shows a centrifugal pump, and there's a flange connecting the input of the pump to the suction gate, and also there's a flange on the output of the pump, and that connects the pump to the discharge side.
This is a slightly better representation of figure 2 of Alberta manual, and where we're dealing with flanges again. So this is the flange, these are the flanges, the arrows pointing. This is the input flange. This is where the liquid comes into the centrifugal pump, which is represented by this piece here. So a centrifugal pump is driven by the motor, and then the way centrifugal pump is connected to piping is through flanges. So the flange on the pipe will connect to the flange on the centrifugal pump through bolts right on the outside of the flange.
So these two flanges require replacement of gaskets, and as a millwright you need to be aware that all sources of energy in this connection or in this diagram need to be locked out or disabled before you commence with your work. Your plant procedures may require you to use blinds to isolate all sources of energy, and
there are three types of blinds in common use: the slip blind, the spectacle blind, and the blind flange. They come in different sizes and ratings. The slip blind is a solid circular metal plate with a T-handle. Slip blinds are inserted between flanges to prevent flow in either direction. The T-handle must extend above the outside surface of the flange by 2 inches. The spectacle blind is a combination blind and spacer made from the same piece of material. It looks like a pair of glasses with one open lens and one solid lens. The spectacle blind is used where blinds are turned frequently. The spectacle blind is a part of the equipment, maintaining proper spacing when not being used as a blind. Using a spectacle blind means that a properly rated and typed blind is available at all times. When the open end shows, the line is blinded, and when the solid end shows, the line is open. A blind flange is a pipe fitting used to cap the flanged end of a pipe or valve.
one disadvantage of pancake blinds or slip blinds is that the flanges have to be spread apart in order for you to remove or to install the blinds. So in this example, if this is the joint, if these are the flanges and they're bolted together to install the pancake blind, you have to release the bolts and spread the flanges just enough so you have a gap big enough to slide the pancake blind in between. On the other hand, if you're using spectacle blinds, they belong in the system, and to isolate the system you just need to rotate the handle and the blind will close the flow of liquid, or it will isolate the system. But you need to keep in mind that spectacle blinds uses 2 gaskets or 1 gasket on each side of the spectacle blind. And another feature to remember is that when opening flanges, you have to open them away from yourself so any liquid under pressure flows away from you. So your plant procedures may dictate that if you need to remove the pump from the system, you have to isolate the system, which means you have to turn off the pump, lock it out, and then go, and if a pancake blind is not installed, you have to separate the flanges and insert the pancake blind. Or if the system has spectacle blinds, then you just go ahead and flip the handle of the spectacle blind to isolate the system or to prevent any flow of liquid or gases to the pump which you will be removing from the system.
Once all sources of energy have been isolated and prior to performing work on piping connections, you must displace toxic or combustible substances, and there are two methods, purging and ventilating. Purging process is better explained on a propane tank, on a brand new propane tank. When you buy a brand new tank, there's a label on it that asks you to purge the cylinder before refilling it with proper gas. And purging is pushing a different type of gas that will displace any kind of combustible gas in the cylinder before the cylinder is refilled with propane. Sometimes purging is accompanied by ventilating the space or supplying breathable air into confined space once the hazardous substances has been removed through purging. Ventilating could be as simple as putting a large fan that blows breathable air into the confined space or into the piping connections that you will be working on. So the basic difference between purging and ventilating is that purging involves removing contaminants inside confined space by displacement with air, and ventilation means the continuous provision of fresh air into the confined space. There are several guidelines for purging, and purging again is displacing combustible air. And you can read about guidelines on this page, and I would like to touch on a couple of them. Number 4 and number 5. Use the proper purging medium and also use an appropriate detector. When purging, some of the common mediums are nitrogen, carbon dioxide, steam, water, and air. And nitrogen is being the most expensive, but it's the best medium to use for purging. When using carbon dioxide, you need to make sure that it's not mixed with water, because when it's mixed with water, when carbon dioxide mixed with water, it forms a corrosive substance. Once you finish purging a confined space, in our examples, it could have been a pump just before you disassemble it, or a piping connection before you go into it to do any welding. You need to check the environment inside for any hazardous toxic gases. Therefore, you have to use gas detection equipment. This is a bellows type sniffer gas detector.
To get started, insert each end of a tube into the tube breaker. Score and break off both ends of the tube. Insert the tube securely into the pump inlet with the arrow on the tube pointing toward the pump. The instructions for the contaminate tube you are sampling will tell you how many strokes you should take per sample. The pump has a built-in counter for your convenience. Take your sample reading after the designated number of pump strokes has been reached. Sample tube reading tips. Hold the tube against a light background.
The idea of checking the color of the tube is you have to compare the colors to the colors given in the table, and then the table will explain to you the presence of different gases and percentage of different gases. Another way to detect harmful gases is to use a personal gas detector. Again, there's a variety of personal gas detectors, and they can monitor either single or multiple gases. You may also see permanent gas detector stations, and these are the stations that are installed. They're bolted to the wall, they're permanent, they're not removable, and they will monitor gases, different gases, for example, in the pump room. And as you're working on the pump, the alarm will go off if there's a presence of harmful gases